Mr. Perrier was right. The is union was actually written incorrectly. Whose fault is that? 100% mine. I've rewritten it and it works. I will show it to you in just a minute. I want to show you the changes that I made throughout. All right? And I have no problem if somebody says, lady, can I just get a hard copy of this? Fine. All right? Now, this is all fine. Everything that's in here is fine. Everything here, okay, all of this is fine. I changed that back to totems so that it would go through it 5 times. That's all fine. Display all, the display tote gross, just fine. First name, okay. Middle initial is okay. Last name is okay. Age is okay. And then we get to is union. Now, don't type. I'll leave it up there. I want to explain what the problem was. The way that I wrote the condition, it was always going to be true or it was always going to be false. And as Tom said correctly, that if you came in there and you put in anything like hello, it just put it in as false. All right? So notice what I've changed. And again, I'll leave it up there if you want to put yours, make yours correct. Notice what I changed. I am now reading it in and asking you to put in true or false. And then I am trimming it. And I'm looking at the string. I'm not converting it. And I'm saying if you literally typed in TRUE or you literally typed in FALSE, if you didn't do that and you didn't do that, I make you do it again. So once you get to this line, don't type look. Once you get to that line, you have either typed in TRUE or you have typed in FALSE rather. Now you can convert it to a Boolean. Now if I put hello in right here, it doesn't take it. And then you return that. So I'll leave that up there. It is now correct. And I'll run the whole thing for you in just a minute. God bless you. Again, I tried to tell the user true or false only. All right? A guy I used to work with at Blackhawk used to always say, you know what? No matter how easy you make it for somebody, you can't account for human stupidity. So somebody might still go and type it, leave it blank, or type in not true, not false, something else. The program should now handle it. There's one more thing that has to be changed, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. So this routine has to be changed, and one thing has got to change in our employee number. Okay? Everything else, to my knowledge, is all correct. What's that?
I take a picture of that.
Yeah, yeah. One of my new students today, Chris, we're half an hour into the class and his power goes and he's frantically looking all over the place to realize he didn't bring up his power cord with him. So he spent the rest of the period without power. We couldn't find a universal power cord either, so no one had an HP one. I don't know if it's good practice. I wasn't going to take mine that's made for an Acer and plug it into his HP. I don't want to screw this machine up. So. Does everybody understand the changes that were made? We want to make sure you can't enter like hello and have it be false, or leave it blank and have it be false. We want to make sure that the user actually puts in the word true or the word false. All right? Now, just so you know, you'd asked this question, I think, Christian, before about caseness. There is a 2 upper and a 2 lower in here. We could use that. So if the user didn't type it in, we could force it to be lower. I didn't do that, but it would have been good practice to do that. Always is. I mean, you can't overcompensate for what people mistakes people are going to make. Okay. There is another error in the program other than this. Let me explain it to you, but if you're still typing, I'll leave this up there. The error was that right now, for the employee number, it'll only work if you put a single-digit employee number in there. Okay? It's not very good, because what happens when you get your 10th employee? Okay, you don't want to do that. So what I did was I changed that pattern that's on there and put in curly braces 5. Okay? Now, I wanted to show you something about that, so I will in a second. Am I right in assuming everybody who wants this has it? Yes? All right. So in the employee number, I changed it to this. Now, before you do that, look what I did first. I said input a 5-digit employee number. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean for the first employee will now be 00001? We can do that, or if you look on the screen, we could do this. That means a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 5. So employee 1 will not have to be 00001. All right, but I just left it like this. So our first employee will be employee, either we're going to have 4 leading zeros, or we start with 10,000. Okay? That's not bad. In fact, if I made that, I'm not going to, but if I made that a 6, it would go up to 1 million. So there's a lot of different ways that you can do this. All right? I'm just doing what I consider to be a fairly simple way of doing it. You may not agree. All right? I am eventually going to take all this stuff that we're creating here, and I'm going to put it all out on the Google Drive that I share with Mr. Smith. He might look at what I'm doing and say, yeah, I understand what he's doing and why I sure as hell wouldn't have done a payroll system. Maybe he's right. I like to do something that we've done before and something that everybody can relate to, directly or indirectly. Now, after making those changes that I showed you, I didn't change anything in hours worked. I didn't change anything in the hourly rate. I didn't change anything in the calculate gross. I didn't change anything in the display all. I didn't change anything in the tote gross. So to my knowledge, this now works. But I'm going to first come through here before we start on the next iteration and do a save all, and then I'm going to run it. Nice thing about having this go from 0 to 4 or 5, as I've got 5 people in my family. All right, so I'm going to just put them all in, including myself. Notice now when I get there, please look on the screen, especially you, Tom. Now the union status, if I put in hello, it doesn't take it. If I spell false wrong, it doesn't take it. All right, but if I put in false, it now takes it. If I put in an employee number that's not 5 digits, it doesn't take it. All right? I'll work no overtime. So there's my information. First name, middle initial, last name, age, union status, employee number, hours, rate, and gross. Looks to me at least like all of that worked. So that, so far, is $800. So that's what we have right now in total gross pay. So put in the next one. I'll put in my wife. $50 and, whoops, no, that was bad. That's fine. 50 and 10. And you'll see now that when you look at this, that the overtime is in there. It's $550. So now we've got that. All right. Third one. Oops. No overtime. Good. That's right on the cusp. That's 40 hours. So that was 1,600. Oops. There's overtime. 850. And finally, 2750. So that should be 0, 5, 10, 15, carry 1, 14, 20, 28, 35, carry 3, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hopefully it's going to give me a final total of 6550. And it does. So to my knowledge, this works. All right. I spent a lot of time, believe it or not, this break, thinking about how much I thought the ASP.NET class sucked. And I want this to be the anti-ASP.NET class. I don't want to give you a program that doesn't work. So one of the things I'm going to strive to do is, if I have mistakes like this, is to fix them. Make sure that what you have is going to be correct. All right. I still have to fix that one from yesterday. I forgot about that, where it went and skipped right over the employee number. But we'll get that. It's not a big fix. All right. So I'm going to do a file, save all, and then I am going to go and start the next iteration. Now, the stuff we do now, it's going to look like this program. Please listen, it's going to look like this program, but to keep it simple, every employee is only going to have a first name, a first name, a last name, an hours worked, an hourly rate, and a gross. Everybody hear that? I'm stripping away some of the stuff. I don't care right now about union status. We're going to add that back. But for now, as we start to move in and really talk about different stuff you do in Java, I'm going to try to make this easier. Am I going to succeed? You're going to tell me. All right. So we now have payroll 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right. You can see them right here. I am going to right mouse click here on source. Again, choose new, and again, choose Java class. You've done this several times before. Mr. Hardy may not have, but everybody else has. That's, Chris, how you create a new class, okay? All right. You literally come over here under where it says source, right mouse click, new Java class, okay? All right. So far, we've got what? Payroll 01 through Payroll 04. So this will be Payroll 05. Okay? And again, there are probably things in here I don't need. There are probably things in here I do need. But one of the things that I am going to do is I'm going to do some copying from what I did before. I still want a decimal format like I had last time. Okay? I want a decimal format like I had before. So I'm going to import java.text.decimal format. Chris, again, you didn't hear this yesterday. If I don't put in this line and I use it down below, I get an error. But if I put my mouse over where the error is, it asks, should I automatically import this for you? And if you click on that, it'll put it in for you. Well, yes, it's similar to stuff in Visual Studio. Yes. I don't think this is as elegant an editor as Visual Studio. All right, but yeah, I guess in that case, yeah, you're correct. All right, like we did last time, so I'm going to do a little bit of copying from what we had before. So just please bear with me for a minute, okay? TOT. I don't care right now about age rather. I'm not going to do a total number of employees. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, good. All right. I'm going to keep that. I'll tell you what, just to try to keep it as simple as possible, I'll keep those variables that are right there, the ones we did before with the decimal formats. All right, and all right, I'm going to add a couple more variables. I'm going to make them here. Private string. I'm just going to call it, holy moly, first name. I'm not worrying about the emp stuff right now. I'm just going to call it first name. Private string last name. Private double hours. Private double rate. Private double gross. All right. So these are the constants that I used right here. And then down below are the variables that I used. All right. I'm not actually going to do very much copy and pasting because what we're going to do, we're going to let the system build a lot of stuff for us in just a minute. What we'll have to type will be very similar as far as the number of lines as to what we just typed. But unlike what we just did, we're going to have two files. This file that we have right here, the one I'm working on, we're not going to have a main in there. Main is going to be in a separate file. The first time we're going to be creating employee objects. I should say payroll objects is probably a better way to put it. Whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. Is there anything that's in there that doesn't make sense to people? There was a lot of typing for emp first name, emp last name, so I just cut it down for this example. All right. All right. I think I mentioned this to you last semester or the one before, but I'm not sure. Okay. I believe that, like I said, in an earlier class, I don't know which class, but we talked about this, and we talked about this, right? Okay, some books refer to a getter, I'm going to say what it is in a minute, as an accessor, and they refer to a setter as a mutator. To make this even more confusing, some books refer to both of them together as an accessor. So it depends on the book that you read. All right? I was taught this way, forgetting about this. Now, you know this from last semester and earlier semesters. As an example, when we talked about this, when we talked about CRUD, no, we're not going to do anything with database. But this was create, this was read, this was update, and this was delete. You all know that from last year. There's nothing new right there. If you think about it, if you're doing an operation, a CRUD operation, all right, the only time you're not changing the data is when you do a read. Does that make sense? A read is like when we used to do a select. You never change data in a database using a select. You can't. You can change the order in which the stuff appears, but you can't change it. A select or a read, that's a getter. You are grabbing something. You cannot change it, but you are grabbing something. If you want to be able to change something, you use a setter. That's the difference between them. So a getter is an accessor. It's like me asking you a question, you providing me an answer. All right. But if as your teacher, that answer isn't acceptable, it's now this, then I'd be using like a setter. All right. Now, I'm going to write something down on here. Don't type this in, please. But we're going to end up creating something that looks like this. You don't have to type this in. But we're going to do something along these lines right here. All right? So let me just put this in here. Not right away, but in just a second, we're going to create something that, for example, will look like this. We will have like public string get first name. Okay, just like that. Public string get first name. And if we don't do any, don't type this in because we're going to have it done for us automatically in a minute. So we'll say what? Return first name, period. That'll be our getter. Notice when you have a getter, please look on the screen because it's important that you understand these concepts. A getter never has a return type of void. Never. Because you're returning something. All right? And virtually 100% of the time, it has nothing passed in. On the other hand, when you do a setter, it's virtually 100% of the time, it's a void for its return type, and it has something passed in. Oops. And we'd say like this dot first name equals FN. Now when we're doing this, I think you'd agree, we're not doing any validation on here. None. We're just assuming that the stuff that comes in is okay. All right? So we're going to amend that in the future as well. Now we could do this. We could type in getter and setter for this, a getter and setter for this, a getter and setter for this, a getter and setter for this, and believe it or not, just a getter for this. We could do that, and you could get it to work, and it wouldn't take long. You don't have to. So I'm going to remove this. And I'd like each of you to do this, please. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to create constructors. We're going to create two constructors. A no argument constructor and then a full argument constructor. So let's make a no arg constructor first. A no arg constructor means we're passing nothing in. When you make a constructor, you use the word public. All right, after the word public, you have the name of the class, which is what? Payroll05. And if it's no arg, we're passing nothing in. All right? So this is going to assume we want to create a new payroll object and we're passing nothing in. Does that make sense? So we have to provide default values. There's different ways we can do this. The way we're going to do it for now is we're just going to say this. We're going to say first name equals FNU. And that means first name unknown. That's all it means. Last name equals last name unknown. Hours equals 0.0. Rate equals 0.0. And that's everything. That's the whole thing. So if we create a new payroll object and provide nothing in as input, all right, that's what we're going to do. Okay? Now, we're going to write one more of these, but before we end up doing that, okay? Just so you see this, many Java programmers and many Java books will take this and put the word this in front of each one of these. It is not mandatory, but you'll see this dot. And this means that whatever is currently active, for lack of better words. You can put it in there. You don't have to put it in there. Since I put it in now, I'll leave it in. but it works just fine whether it's in there or whether it's not in there. Just fine, not a problem. All right, so now I'm going to create what I'm going to call, this is no official term, but I'm going to call it a full arg constructor. I've never heard that. I could call it a 4-argument constructor. It doesn't really matter. But I'm going to give values to all 4 of these. So public, Payroll05. Notice, please look on the screen. See, if I do this, I get an error because they're exactly the same, aren't they? Look on the screen, please. They're exactly the same. So I have to put what's in the parentheses has got to be different. So I'll have a string for the first name. I'll have a string for the last name. I'll have a double for the hours, and I'll have a double for the rate. Now it's just fine and dandy. All right? Now, I'm going to type something in. I'm going to type in 4 lines. You can type them in, okay? After I type them in, I'm going to comment them out. So if it helps you to understand, type them in. If you say, I'm commenting it out, that's too confusing, then don't type it in. All right? So I'm going to put here this dot first name equals, and I'm going to check it. As long as the first name does not equal a blank, okay? What's the blank here? That's an S. There we go. As long as it's not a blank, all right? All right, let me just do some copying here. Okay. All this red, I guarantee you, will go away in a matter of moments. I said it's going to be up to you whether or not you type this. You'll understand hopefully in just a minute. Okay? What I'm going to do is after I type this in, I'm going to comment it out. So I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but I'm trying to. So again, in just a minute, I'm going to comment this out. But if you want to type it in, and I'm going to explain everything that's in here. You have to trust me, but I will. There is absolutely nothing wrong with what I have in here, but first thing I want to do is I want to show you something. This don't type, but I do want to show you this. Please look up on the screen, because this is an error that most, at least beginning programmers, make. All right? If I actually use in here the same name, first name, last name, I'm going to change this back in just a second, hours, and rate. if I use the same names here that I have up here, if I use those same names, I must use the word this. Did you hear me? You must. That's why some programmers always use the word this, whether they have to or not. All right? But if I make them different, like I did, FN, LN, H, and R, now it is optional whether I use that or not. Okay? Now, I said to you before, I'm going to comment this out. You might say, why would you comment it out if you said it works? Because this is what I want to do for a setter for first name. This is what I want to do for a setter for last name. This is what I want to do for a setter for hours. And this is what I want to do for a setter for rate. So if I leave that in there, I'm going to replicate that code later on in my program. I don't want to replicate my code. That's why I'm going to copy it, or I'm going to comment it out. All right? Now, I'm going to call 4 methods that I haven't written yet, and I don't want to do that. So let's write them. Don't worry about typing. You don't have to type a lick. All right? Right here. Get down so you're underneath here, underneath your full arrow constructor, after that curly brace. All right? This is one of the neat features about Java IDEs. We are now going to have the Java IDE write 4 setters and 4 getters for us without us having to write anything. To do that, you click, is it code? Yeah. Click code up in your menu. And the 4th option down says generate. Code, generate. All right? We could do them individually. Let's just do them together. So let's type in let's click on getter and setter. And what do we want to choose? Well, geez, that's confusing. We want the first name. Hold down on your shift key and choose first name, last name, hours, and rate. After you do it and yours looks like this, you can click OK. Once you click OK, it's going to write 4 getters and 4 setters for you. If you don't think this is a nice feature, you're wrong. Because if you've got an object that's got 50 fields in it, it'll write 50 setters and 50 getters for you. That's pretty doggone nice. Now we're going to have to go in and make modifications to our setters because by default it doesn't do any validation. But you know those 4 lines I just had you put in, we're going to copy them one at a time to our setter, and then we're going to uncomment them. If you say I don't know what you mean, you will in a second. So with these 4 highlighted, I'm going to click OK. And lo and behold, look what it wrote for us. Get first name, set first name. Get last name, set last name. Get hours, set hours. Get rate, set rate. In Java, a true object-oriented programming language, when you are writing methods that are going to either establish a value for your properties or your fields or retrieve those values, you use getters and setters. You'll notice that I call this, if you look up on the screen here, first name with a little f, last name with a little n, hours with a little h, rate with a little r. And you'll notice how the system set them up. It always has the word set in lowercase. Then it takes the field name and it always uppercases that first letter. That's considered just a fine practice. All right? All of your fields really in Java should be done like this. Some books will say use an underscore. Don't do that. All right? I think this is a better way of doing it. All right? Now, I'm going to take these lines that we've got right here. I'm going to take this that's right there. Oops, I don't know what I just did. Yeah, but I was going to say, but I'm sure I screwed something up. All right, I'm going to grab this line without the comment. I'm going to copy it to the clipboard. I'm going to go down to my getter for my first name, and I'm going to replace that line with this line. You're right, thank you, my setter. I'm going to replace that with this. Now you're like, what the heck? There's FN in there. Yeah, we're going to have to add that. That's okay. All right? I can either change this right there to first name and that to first name, or look on the screen, please. I can do one of two things here. I can change this to first name, I can change this to first name, or I can just come in there and make that FN. To me, that's an easier way of doing it. Thank you for saying set, or whoever, John, or whoever said that. Thank you. So I've done the first one. Now I'm going to go over and do the second one. So I'm going to grab this last name thing that's right here. I'm going to copy that to the clipboard. The last name one, go into the setter for the last name and put in that line and change from the parameter name from string last name to string ln. Boom. Now that one's done. And I'm going to do the other two in just a minute. All right, I'm not done yet, but I'm well on my way. Okay, so I've got the first two done. Now I'm going to grab this third one with the hours. I'm going to grab that. And I'm going to go to my setter for hours. I'm going to paste in that line, and I'm going to change the name of the parameter to H. Notice now that works. And then finally, I'm going to go back up to rate, grab that one. Go down to the setter for rate, replace that line, and change the name of my parameter to R. Now, I did that quickly, okay? One thing I don't like about the way that this does it for you automatically, it does getter, setter, getter, setter, getter, setter, getter, setter. I wish it did getter, 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 setter, 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 setter. If there's a way to do that, I never figured it out, but I didn't really try. So here are my first two setters in lines 47 and in line 55. Make sure you change the parameter names to FN and LN. So it's on 47, and mine at least, that's the numbers, 47 and 55. All right? And here are the setters for the hours and for the rate. If you don't like the fact I've got a lot of white space there, I can remove that. It doesn't really matter one way or the other. And right now, as of this moment, you're not appreciating what we did yet. When we do the rest of the program, hopefully you'll start to appreciate why we're doing this. Okay, but right now it probably doesn't make a whole heck of a lot of sense. Okay? Now, I think you'd all agree we've got a setter for our rate, we've got a setter for our hours, we've got a setter for our last name, we've got a setter for our first name. But guess what? As of right now, we're not calling that at all. We're never calling that. Look on the screen, please. For our full arg constructor, see this? See that? The stuff I commented out? We're doing nothing right now because we commented all of it out. So we're going to replace that with 4 calls, a call to each one of our setters. And we have to pass in, whoop, not F, FN, sorry. now we're going to be calling those particular setters. Now, you may or may not understand this right now, but I think if you think about it, hopefully at least you will. What we're doing here in the stuff that we commented out is virtually, it's exactly the same. It's exactly the same as what we're doing here. So we could have uncommented these lines out and just done them the way that they are right now. We could have done that and it would have worked fine. But we're repeating a lot of code. You may have heard of this expression, you may not have, but there is an expression that you'll hear if you're around this business long enough that's called dry. Dry means do not repeat yourself. All right, that's what the DR and Y stand for. And I'm trying to teach you the concepts of dry in here. Okay? So again, we could have left this in there, would have worked just fine. And if we left this in here, we wouldn't need these. All right? But what our constructor will do is it'll call set first name, which will basically do this. Then it will call set last name, which will basically do that. Then it will call set hours, which will basically do that. Then it'll call set rate, which will basically do that. Conceptually, does that make sense to people? All right. And, again, you might say, who the hell cares? All I can tell you is I've gone to talks where people have explained why object-oriented is so much better. And I've talked to people next to me who don't use it. And I said, did they convince you? And they said, not a damn bit. Okay? We don't use object-oriented languages. We never will. Because I think all this stuff stinks. But there are places up the wazoo that use it. When we did, if you remember, 2 semesters ago in the C# class, where we had kind of that problem where I had you work together on the employee class and all that stuff, we did kind of this. All right? There's much more C# programming jobs out there for people who understand it object-oriented than people who can just write nice GUIs. I'm just telling you, that's just the way it is. All right? Because as what you're doing gets more and more complex, it doesn't matter about the GUI. A lot of times it won't even be a GUI. Who the heck cares? It'll be classes, and that's what we're doing here. All right? And we are directly calling our setters. Guess what? When we print something out, remember this? I'm just showing you this. Remember this thing that we just did a few minutes ago? Remember when we did all this stuff? Okay? What we'll do now is when we want to print out, come on, the first name, guess what we're going to call? The getter. We're going to call get first name. We're going to call get middle name or get last name, etc. That's how this stuff is used. All right? And again, that may or may not make a whole boatload of sense right now. And I get it. I do. All right. Let's see if that's done. One thing you may or may not have noticed in here, we didn't do anything with the gross. All right? We could have done the getters and setters. We could have done a getter and a setter for gross. We're going to write a getter with a G, like giraffe or like Gary. A getter for the gross pay. When I write it, you're going to go, wait a minute, that looks just like it should be a setter. Yeah, but you have to trust me. I'll give you the explanation as to why afterwards. So we've got getter, setter, getter, setter, getter, setter, getter, setter. After your last setter here, let's write another one. All right, this is going to be public, void, get gross. You can call it get gross. You can call it get gross pay. It really and truly does not matter. Did you hear me? It really and truly does not matter. Now, don't type this. But didn't we just type in this? I'm asking you. Didn't we just type in something like this? If, oops, this is going to give me errors, don't worry about it, but like if emp hours worked is greater than or less than or equal to max non-OT. We said they had no overtime coming, so we said their gross pay equals their hours worked times their hourly rate. I'm asking you that. Isn't that what we just did? We don't want to do that anymore. All that stuff is red. We don't want to do any of that. I'm going to remove it. We don't want to write that. But I'm asking you, true or false? That's what we just did in the last program. True or false? Say true. True. Good. Thank you. All right. We're going to change that, and we're going to write it like this. We're going to say if get hours is less than or equal to max non-OT. All right. If that is the case, then our gross is equal to our hours times our rate. In other words, they have no overtime. Else, so how about this? We'll put a comment here. Worked no overtime. Else, and we'll put a comment here that says worked overtime. All right. Now, look how this changes. Gross equals get rate times max non-OT plus get hours minus max non-OT times get rate times OT rate. Okay. You may or may not agree with the fact that this is cleaner looking. You may agree with that. You may not agree with that. Either way, it's okay. But the thought behind using an object-oriented language like JavaScript is what you're doing is you are calling getters. You're always sure you're going to get the most up-to-date values for these fields. Always. All right? The values that you put in these fields, last name or first name, last name, hours, and rate, those four values, they make up what's known as the state. That is the state of each one of these, what we're gonna create in a few minutes, called each one of these payroll objects. All right, and you want your state. The state of your objects is as important as your database data. You want it to always be correct, up to date. All right, and the idea is this is going to make sure that it's cleaner. Do you all get the fact when you look on the screen here? This, there are 4 method calls in there. Does that make sense? All right. You are always going to be grabbing the most up-to-date value for this. All right. And like I said, that may not make a whole boatload of sense right now, and I get it. All right. The only thing we didn't do, though, okay, is we didn't return the gross. Okay. So, actually, technically, we don't have to. So, I don't know why I put it there, but I did. Now, if we were doing the total gross like we did before, did we put total gross in here? I don't remember. We have total gross. No, we could put it in there if we wanted to and do that. I'm not worried about that. All All right, I'm looking in here to see what we have left, because in this particular routine, not a lot. Okay. Now, you may or may not be aware of this. What we want to be able to do, if you would please, don't type a bit of this in. We're going to create another file right now. It's not a big file. It's not nearly, it's not even half the size. We'll do it in a page. Be about 40 or 50 lines, something like that, 30, 40 lines, I don't know. We're going to create some payroll objects. That's going to be our main. Everybody hear what I just said? We're going to create some payroll objects, and that's going to be our main. After we do that, we want to be able to do this. We want to say something like system.out.println, and if I create a payroll object named Jeff, I want to do that. And I want it to automatically print all my information out for me. Look on the screen, please. It's giving me an error right now, but I want you to understand this. We're going to do that in just a minute. But the problem is, when you call system.out.println, it calls a built-in method that's inside of Java called toString. You know toString from C#. All right, we have to override the toString method and make our own. That's what we're going to do. Then we're done with this particular page. All right, it's going to look pretty doggone familiar to you too. Public string, not like that. Public string, toString. So far, it probably looks pretty similar, but we want to call here get first name. Okay. In fact, just to be sure, what are you doing here? Come on, stop it. I'm going to put a \n in before everything that's in here. Okay, and I'm going to copy this 4 times. All right, so don't worry, we'll fix it all right now. So first name, last name, hours, rate, and gross. All right. Please remember, what did we do before this? We set up our format strings, so we can change these to these last ones that are in here. The hours we can make format2 dot. I'm sorry. What do we call these? I don't know what we called them. Call them pattern 1 and pattern 2. All right. So pattern 2 dot format, and these two will both be pattern 1 dot format. And I could be mistaken, but I don't think I am. That is it for this part. You all have the I need a break look on my face. So let's come back, please. I'm just going to make it a 10-minute one. It's 2:57. Let's start up again at 3:10, please. Oh, there's got to be a return statement in here, so I am missing that line. Return output string. There you go. Okay. That is it, but again, this is the first time we've created a Java application that does not have a main. We're going to create main when you come back from your break. Make sure you add this line, please. And not a bad idea to do a file save all before you go on your break. What didn't you get?
I got up to, you gave me, up to, you gave me the last part was 8.
I just printed out the whole thing.
Okay. Hang on.
Yep.
For the first page, say format get mistake.
That's because there's a mistake. Thank you. And I'll try to remind everybody of that when they come back. Let's see. Try to figure it out. Format. Cannot resolve. Format. Okay. Right. Ah, okay. I see it. It is wrong. So that's going to be double. And that has to be returned. And that has to be... No, it works. Okay. We'll go over why it didn't work in just a minute. It'll work now. Again, don't type in the word regex there. Put it down if you want. I just tried to even it out for you. So.
When I ran it, it stopped at the employee number right there.
No, the employee number has to be 5 digits.
What has to be first?
Well, then let's go back and look at your regular expression that you have in there. Subtract the employee number. Oh.
I'm missing 2 parentheses, but
I'm just taking a quick look. I don't see what looks wrong there. Static string. That's correct. Those are curlies, right? Curly braces.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's what I thought. I mean, that's what it looks like. I'm just double checking. Okay. Oh, no, isn't it? Well, and do one other thing too. Is there a build up there? Do a build and tell it to rebuild the project. It is not impossible that it's using an old version that was cached. It shouldn't be doing that, but it's not impossible that it's doing that. That's interesting. You're getting these squiggles, and that typically means
I
it's
think that's a spell. Yeah.
no. Oh, okay.
It's
All right, just
a
the spell.
check,
Okay.
Yeah, which is interesting
All right.
that they have that on here.
Yeah. Well, I can print it out for you, and you can take a look at it, so you can see what the problem is. I've just taken a quick look like that. I didn't see anything that looked wrong.